Dalit Teves, Hatavshin Samech Tes, Hemshech Samech Tes.
Where are the Dalit Teves? Just coming into Dalit
Gimel
Teves.
Teves. Page Zayin.
Okay, good. Good. Right, so we saw the Klaus Ainin of Miyesh Layesh Mochach Liyesh Ayin Be'emta. And we saw that Lamaila, the Yesh Amiti was the Eibishter B'Atzmusei, and the Yesh Haniva was the other extremity. That was the Inan of the Dover Hanifa, the Yesh Gashmi B'Zeh Ha'Ilam. And in order for there to be the Isavitz of that Yesh, there had to be a Ayin Be'emta, or also the Klolos of the Oyer, the music of Oyer. And B'Zeh itself, we saw that it was Mischalik two Madregas. The Ayin, and that Oyer Be'emta, that's called the Ayin Be'emta. And the Oyer is called Ayin because the Oyer is only a Ha'ora Bilvad, and it's not Erech Klau El Hamoya, and therefore it's called a Ha'ora and a Ayin. It's of no Matthias Atzmi. The Atzmi, it's only a Gilui Hamoya Bilvad, and that in that Gufa, in the even of a Ha'ora. And it itself is Mishchalik to two levels. We saw there was the Ayin of the Yesh Ha'amiti, and then there was another Ayin, the Ayin of the Yesh Hanivra. And we saw that the Ayin of the Yesh Amiti was a Gilui Oyer from the Moya, and that was still, in inverted commas, Lefi Erech the Moya. It still was a Gilui of the Moya Mamish, and even though it's not Be'erech HaMoya, but nonetheless it has in itself certain Yonim and Gilui of the Moya, which are of great significance, and therefore we say that it's in a form of Erech, or Fi Erech HaMoya. And therefore it's two kloli and two v'derech peshitas to be a mocheh for the Yesh Hanivra. Well, the Yesh Hanivra is already a dover of a Matthias b'fnei atzmei, and it's also limited in Yonim Misuyomim and Mugbalim le'atzmei. For that to take shape, the coming about of the Yesh Hanivra Mamish, there has to be a further Ayin, a further Ha'ora from the Ha'ora Klalias, which is also Be'en Arek to its Ha'ora, just like the Ha'ora Rishain is Be'en Arek to the Atzmas, and that becomes the Mokeh of the Yesh, and is Mislabish and Mahave B'derech Islabshus, and B'derech Chayis to the Yesh Hanivra. We asked before where you were.
I have a stomach problem.
And that's the Yesh Shani, or the Yesh of the the Ayin Hashani, the Ayin of the Yesh Haniva, which is actually Machaya and Mislavish in the Yesh Haniva. That's where we were holding, and we described briefly the two levels of the Ayin. The human Zeh al Derech Moshel, that's where we were holding. This will be understood by way of a Moshel, Mitzmichas HaTavua v'HaPeiros ve'Asovim shetzmichosam hu mikech HaTzeimeach. If we take, so the Rebbe mentions a number of detailed inyonim, but they're already specific tzmochim, vegetational quantities, or inyonim, what they grow from the earth, papoyo, and there's a koyach in the earth, which is called a koyach hatzimeach, which makes them grow, mikatnes legadlas, and also gives them all sorts of other what you might call characteristics and inyonim which are necessary for their growth. But that's already specific inyonim. But therefore we mention a number of different inyonim to indicate that once you get to the actual growth of the tzmochim on the face of the ground, on the face of the adoma, then you have many different types, and they are, each one of them have specific form of chayas, and specifically what you might call needs of chayes, which is shy to each one of them. And ever the Rebbe says you can have peiros and you can have tvua, which is crops in general. Peiros is fruits. Asovim means like lawn or grass, general vegetational grass. That they're growing, and they're what you might call elevation from katnus, smallness, to gadlus, is from the koyach of the tzomeach. Now this lashon koyach hatzomeach is a very common phrase. So this occurs in Torah and L'chutei Torah in many occasions, and later in the words of the Rabbeim. Or B'ikar we find it in Tanya. We find it in the famous Igeras HaKodesh chapter 20. That's what he mentions now. I am Mashikosu B'igeras HaKodesh Siman Kof, chapter 20. Dibur Hamaschil Ihu V'Chayehu Chad. It's a very famous letter of the Alter Rebbe, or document that the Alter Rebbe wrote, some counted hours before his passing from the world, as is well known. Shortly before the Shabbos, on the Motzei Shabbos, of which Koftala Teves at that time was on Motzei Shabbos, the Alter Rebbe passed away. Just before the Shabbos, he wrote this long document called Ihu V'Chayehu Chad. So over there, he says that the earth possesses what's called koyach hatzomeach. The earth has in itself a power. When we use the word koyach, the normal translation of the word koyach means a power, but it means a specific gilui, eloki, which its Indian is to produce certain results in the function of the earth. And that's what we call a power of giving to grow, a koyach hatzomeach. And the Alter Rebbe over there talks about that near the end of the whole famous document over there, Ihu V'Chayehu Chad. What does that koyach hatzomeach do? Hamatzmiach kol minei desher v'esev v'chol minei peiros kol echad v'echad liminehu. That the koyach hatzomeach makes grow, matzmiach. It causes to grow from the seed state, from the absolute katnus, into the full development of the plant. It causes it to grow, matzmiach, which is the causatory form of the verb. Kol minei desher v'esev, and that koyach hatzomeach is mislavish in each one of them according to its specific species. Kol echad v'echad lemineihu, which means that we're talking about a ribui at this point. We're talking about a ribui expressions of the koyach hatzomeach. The way it makes desher grow is not similar to the way it makes trees that produce peiros, and it's not similar to the way that crops grow. In other words, that on that level, at that point where it's actually growing from the face of the ground, then we're talking about a numerous numbers of appearances of different expressions of that koyach hakloli, which we call koyach hatzomeach. So that immediately produces in the mind of the intelligent reader a picture whereby he sees that you've got the earth, beklal, all over the globe of the earth, and in that earth is this potential power to make things grow. And that's not something we can describe in any specific way. We just say the earth produces a potential power which, if you plant things in it, it'll cause things to grow. Now the truth of the matter is that the essential koyach hatzomeach is not absolutely the same in all parts of the globe. I mean, some earth have got expressions of the koyach hatzomeach hakloli which are given to only what you might call, in inverted commas, limited expressions due to that particular part of the globe and due to the requirements of the climate or other inyanim. In other words, milachatchila, that very close koyach is not the same everywhere. You can't just say it. But on the other hand, in a more mufshat, in a more abstract way, it is the same. It's the same general power. The earth has got to produce things to grow within it. However, we're going to see that alters, and that's what we see in this sentence, to the point that it become multiple to the extreme, almost without end. The number of different things that power to make grow can actually end up expressing itself on the face and the surface of the earth. And therefore, he says that is matzmiach kol minei asovim and vegetational matter. Kol echad ve'echad lemineihu, meaning ribui expressions of that power. V'neida, it's well known. If we now go back to the very essence of the koyach hatzameach itself, hu koyach hiyuli atzmi u poshut ve'eno b'pchinas hamshocha klal. It's not in any form of derivation or passage forward from its own self. It has no specific form of expression. Tziyur means like a shape or a form. Has no expressive or particular or specific way of expressing itself at all. Due to the fact that it's a koyach hayuli or atzmi v'pashut, liyesh shayich, that it should be applicable or ready or in some way adjoined to lahatzmich ezet tzemach, that it should be able to actually give forth any form of a given plant. So here we jump to the other extreme now, and we say that this koyach hatzameach is in the earth, and it's a koyach hiyuli atzmi uposhet. And the marker of that koyach hiyuli atzmi uposhet is the mimer in the Asar Mamaris in Torah, in the first psukim of Bereshit, where the Eibusha said, Tadshei ha'oretz, that the Eibusha said that the earth should produce vegetation. And so that includes in itself all of the inyanim what the earth produces. Absolutely unlimited possibilities in that Maimar Eloki of Tadshei ha'oretz. So it's moving that when the Eibusha said Tadshei ha'oretz Desh, he wasn't talking about any particular specific form of vegetation. He just said that he's giving forth from himself, as it almost were a commandment into the earth, that the earth should be capable and ready, as it were, to produce all of these different forms of growth. And that's the mokir v'sherish of this koyach hatzameach. Now this koyach hatzameach, he describes it as koyach hiyuli atzmi. Now we've already had these expressions before, but just very briefly, the inyan of koyach, the word koyach, we're going to have to deal with in more detail as we go along. The word koyach means a specific, limited expression of a given power, of a given capacity to produce a certain specifically defined or limited inyan. That's what the word koyach means. And therefore we say that a mention himself has got the koyach haseichol, for example, or we say he has, on a much lower level, the koyach of movement in his limbs. That's called koyach hatnua. As you can't say that the koyach hatnua would that he feels the love for the Eibusha, for example. No, each inyan in the koyachis of the nefesh have their own specific revelation, and they have their own specific keli. In other words, the word koyach is limited to the concept of a special vessel which produces that revelation only in a certain acceptable way to that kli. In other words, lefi oifen of the kli and matim to the inyan of the kli. And that's the word koyach. And therefore, we say that the mention got also of koichois, loshen rabim, because the nefesh being moved off in the koich, the nefesh is an Indian of peshitas, it expresses itself in all sorts of different koiches, and they come out in a form of what we call havdolah from the nefesh. They don't just come in a derivation, the derech mamela from the nefesh, nor they are dafki in the rotzen of the nefesh, or a willing act on the part of the nefesh to produce a certain specific, limited in its own definition entity, and that's called a koyach. So we see that the power to cause things to grow in the earth is called a koyach, even the gabi lamayla. So that maima eloki tachya or tzedesha, which is the shirish of mokya of this koyach hatzomayach, that's already a gilu from the Eibishter, which we could say, and the Rebbe is going to say later on that that's apparently what we have to say, that that's what's called koyach legabi elokus. In other words, that elokus has got the ability to produce what we call light, oil, emanation, and it's got the ability to produce what we call koyach. So that's the sinin of the investing of this power in the earth. Well, it's called koyach legavi de Eivishter, and it's called koyach hatzoy meya. However, that koyach is hiyuli, and we've seen that the word hiyuli means like a source point or a deriving point for a whole series of possibilities, but that means that they're in a state of abstractity. They're not just a collection together of all the possibilities. In other words, you can't just collect a lot of possibilities and put them together in a box or in a kli and say that you have a hiyuli. A hiyuli is something which is mudal, it's beyond and more supreme in its essence to all the possibilities that can come out of it, but it's a recognizable source from whence those possibilities do derive and go out. And therefore it's called hiyuli. And it's well known that the word hiyuli means potential, and potential means something that's on the way to producing. However, it's a Indian which is muvdal in the sense that it's not just a makeup of all the things that it's going to produce. It's a higher and more abstract and what you might call untiresome. It doesn't get weary or limited by the number of things that it can produce, but it can only produce in a certain line. It can only produce in a certain even, and that's called a hiyuli. Now, one of the dogmas of hiyuli that we have in Teves a lot, and we have it in the Maimon that we've already learned up to now, is the Indian of the koyach hamaskil, as we call it, the mind, as you might call it, the etzim power of seichel in the nefesh adam. Now, that's not something that you can point to and say that is a specific idea. We just say the mensch has seichel, means that he's got the power to produce ideas and to understand ideas which are given to him by other media, and that's called the koyach hiyuli hasichli. And normally you speak about it, you say that's the person's mind, because the mind means that anything could go out from that mind and he can produce and deal in all the usual ways with seichel, any way you could imagine. So that's a hiyuli. Now, in hiyuli gufa there are different levels also. And there's what we call a hiyuli haposhut and what we call a hiyuli stam. So the koyach hamaskil is a hiyuli stam. He's already been miskala from the nefesh, because you can already recognize your mind, you feel it. When you are given a problem and you struggle with it, then you know that your mind is dealing with it, but you can't say what your mind is. You can't limit your mind to any given idea or function, but you know that there is this general power within you which is wrestling to reveal some point, and that's called the mind, and that's called koyach hamaskil. That's a hiyuli. We say that even higher in the simplicity of the nefesh, in the etzem pshitas of the nefesh, then that hiyuli exists in an even more essential way, together with all the other koyches, all combined together in a beetle to the etzem nefesh in a very high level, and they're called koyches hiyuliyim ha'atzmiyim. In other words, they're on a higher level even than the mind. That's the way that the koyach of seichel is kollel inside, as it were, almost the simplicity of the etzem nefesh. So that's what the Rebbe says here. Koyach HaTzomeach, the way the Eibusher plants it in the ground of the earth, is a koyach hiyuli. It can produce all sorts of things. Like we saw in different areas, it does different things. But it's all basically the same general koyach HaTzomeach everywhere in the earth. And that's hiyuli. It's beyond any specific gilui. But from it, the specific giluim come. But it's a hiyuli ha'atzmi. It's as it were withdrawn yet. And it's got in itself the union of pshitas and havdolah from any particular gilui as yet. So we're going to see as we go along that that's already a level in the gilui of the koyach HaTzomeach, as we're going to now describe. So that was the Rebbe. That is koyach hiyuli atzmi, higher than stam hiyuli, no hiyuli atzmi, and therefore it's poshut. It's beyond any expression of any specific revelation yet. But eino b'pchinas hamshocha. It's not in the form of any derivation into gilui. V'lo yesh boi, and it's one only expression in the word Arabayim, lo yesh, is not good Hebrew. When they say lo yesh, yeah, they mean to completely cancel the idea. It's like a very firm negative. It doesn't have any shape or any form or any gathering together of details in itself at all. That it should be shaykh to give forth any particular tzemach at this point. Of course, ultimately, all the tzmochim that grow do come from it. If it weren't for that, they wouldn't grow. But at that particular stage, the way it's found in the earth, then it doesn't have within itself the stage of gilui to produce any specific tzemach. The imiyos shehu nimtze ba'oretz. You can't say that the koyach HaTzomeach is not there in the ground. I mean, in Cain, what does he mean? Nimtze ba'oretz? Because well, maybe it's not in the ground, but maybe it's just a spiritual union that the Eibusher gave forth, and it's my mom is like Elikus, but it's not anywhere in particular. So he said, no, that's not the case. The koyach HaTzomeach is actually inside the ground. But ein ze b'chinas hislabshus or b'chinas hispashtus b'horetz li'o yishayach le'eze pu'ula she'iyeh. He said, however, the etzem koyach HaTzomeach is not in a state of hislabshus. In other words, it's not the pshat that the earth is a vessel and the koyach HaTzomeach is a oil which is mislabish in the vessel. Because if it were, then it would already be limited by that particular form of earth, and then it would only be able to express itself according to that particular form of earth. Now that does in effect later occur, but that's only much later when there's already been a specific gilui from the koyach. But the etzem koyach HaTzomeach atzmei is too high to be described that way at all. Yet it's only there in the earth, it's present in the earth, but it's not nitfas, how do you call it? It's not grasped or malubish like a kli inside the earth. It's just present in the earth, which makes it lamaila from any of the immediate effects of any specific type of earth. And there he said it's ein ze b'chinas hislabshus u'b'chinas hispashtus. It doesn't spread forth from the keli like a oil does. From its kli, it's mispashet from its kli. But if it did, if it was mishpashet from that kli, then it would be shayach le'eze pu'ula sheyeh. It would be shayach to specific pu'ulas. Now the word pu'ula is important because the word pu'ula is, generally speaking, in Rav Mekaymas talk about the difference between koyach and oyer. They say that the resultant, what you might call uftu, the final presented result, or what a koyach actually does in specific revelation, is a pu'ula. Now, when you say the word pu'ula in Russian Kodesh, it's from the word poel. Poel means to affect or to work almost, to work at something, to make something, to produce something. So a pu'ula is a specific, defined thing, and if it's not, then it can't be called a pu'ula. For example, some of the mitzvahs are called pu'ulos. In other words, if people go out and they do a specific thing. So if a guy were just to walk out into the street in Kwachabad, he would just say, oh, yes, Holocaust, Ner Chanukah, yeah, that wouldn't be called a pu'ula, because it's a general statement. He's just looking at the air and saying something about Chanukah or about Holocaust. So he might have made a pu'ula in the cleanliness of the air or something in his immediate surroundings, but that's not called mivtzoim. Pu'ula means when there's a specific ge'ilui in a way that has a tangible and definable result. That's a pu'ula. So that what you might call the outcome of koyach is pu'ula. And therefore you have the expression koyach u'poyel. Often you have that expression, and therefore you often find that we say koyach ha'poyel be'nifal. That sometimes the koyach actually enters the nifal and makes it function. And therefore it's called koyach of the po'el. Koyach po'el b'hanifal. So that was the Rebbe. Once you got Ainian von Islapshus in a kli, and you've got a spreading out of the oil from that kli within the function of the kli, or we could say that maybe he means by the words is pashtas, he means a oil or a ha'ora, which is lefi erech to the adova ha-nimto in the oil, or malubish. Then it would be shayach la pu'ula. Then it would be koyach, how it's already come down to a level of being po'el, a specific pu'ula. Therefore, he says sheyeh. I'm sorry. Slicha. The shayach la eze pu'ula sheyeh. That it should be applicable to any particular pu'ula. Kim. If it's not that, then what is it? In other words, the koyach ha'pu'ula, the koyach ha'tzomeach be'etzem is to be found in the earth, in his etzem, k'moishahu. But he's not. He's there, but he's not. In other words, he's there in the ground, but he is beyond the ground. Not that the ground in any way determines what he's going to do or how he's going to function in a way that would demand of him specific relative activities towards the earth. He's just there, and he's beyond it. But if he weren't, then never would you ever get to an itzmicha klal. So there was it that every nimtzulaf is there, and that's what we have to say, like we pointed out, that the world is tremendously complex, and yet the world produces all sorts of different. So the way that we're explaining that is that there's a general power based and noveya from the statement of Hashem Tacha Oretz, that goes down into the earth. It's found in the earth everywhere, but it's not nitfas or merubash just there, waiting on certain other activities or functions which will make it go down and become specific. What is that going down and become specific? Well, that's we're going to see that it gives off a ha'ora from itself, and then in that ha'ora itself it gives off a further ha'ora depending on what particular part of the earth it may happen to be. So therefore he said it's only that the etzem is nimta bo'ol. Therefore the word nimta is very important, because the word nimta means it's found, but it's not part of the situation. It's not malubish and nitfas in the situation. Okay, now we move to another moshul. This particular moshul, we move into another moshul. And as I pointed out before we came to this whole passage, there are several moshalim in Siddur for this idea of miyesh leyesh. There are these two levels in ayin be'emta. We're now doing with the koyach ha'tzomeach. We're now going to move to another moshul for a minute, and then we're going to come back to the koyach ha'tzomeach in the audit. Just that the Rebbe feels that this moving briefly into this other moshul is going to help us appreciate the flow of this moshul. And the truth of the matter is that there's at least another moshul, at least one more moshul in Siddur, apart from these two that we're mentioning here. And maybe we'll mention them briefly as we go along. We already hinted at one of them, that's the whole idea of the koyach ha'yuli, ha'achmi in the nefesh, and in the koyach ha'yuli, ha'yeser close to the infant gilui, and then the infant koyach ha'seichel v'chulu. That's another one of the masholim. However, the Rebbe says, or Kamoi, he says the inyan of, where are we? Kamoi hatahuim, shemitaches la'oretz, shekol ha'mayones v'kol ha'meimois, harihem nimtzoim mi'atahuim. Hari'ein hatahuim atzmoi mispashet ba'oretz, ki im ha'mayones ha'nimtzoim mi'. Now this is really a tricky one, because when you first glance at this marshal, you think that it's like almost a little bit of a sort of a steer or a conflicting factor, like the marshal we just said. And if you think very carefully in the Lashon that the Rebbe says it in, then you kind of come up with a very wondrous phenomenon that Chassidus explains when I get to this whole concept of the Tahui. And that is that the Tahuim is it's hard to translate it into English. I guess it means the abyss. The only way you can really translate it is with the word abyss, or something like that. But what it means is the unlimited water which is found underneath the whole crust of the earth, deep inside the Kadur, the planet, there's water. The Gemara calls that Mayim Shein Lem Seif. It's really unlimited water for all intents and purposes. Ultimately, like the Teves is ain't safe. You would probably have to say that it's not Mamish ain't safe. But in human terms, it's ain't safe. So that water of the Tehim is an existing massive body of water which just happens to be there. You might say, that's water with the Eibster. Originally there was water over the whole of the surface of the earth, and then the Eibster gathered together all of the water and he made the earth appear, and so on, and so huge amounts of water literally moved out of the way. So where did they all go? They went into this thing called the Tohoim. But we can't say that the Tohoim is only just a fill-up from all the water that was gekretched in Ma'aser Bereishis. No, there's such a thing as Mayim Mitachas Lo. It's called the Tohoim. It's an unlimited source of water. So now you might say, yeah.
Is that what brought the Mabul?
Is
that what came up from the Mabul?
Yes, it did. It did. But I think Chassidus would explain that not the Etzam HaTohim. I was about to suggest that if anybody's cold, that they can close the windows. If you can close one or so if you wish. In Mamela, you see, we're going to have to argue that not the Etzem HaTohim itself came up. But what we can suggest is that the ayin, which is very close to the Tohim, that's what came up. And that'll be enough to make a mabul, don't worry. As they say in Hebrew, v'oideich. So, we've got this massive, unlimited body of water at the bottom, or inside the crust of the earth, and that's called the abyss, or the Tohim. So now the Rebbe says, we see that there's water that comes up from underneath the earth. I mean, you have these things, what they call artesian bores, where they bore down and great sprouts of water appear, tremendous power, and so on. So probably normal, geologists or whoever they might be, they would probably tell you that that's water which is coming from the Tohim. They say that's abysmal water, or artesian as they call it in the Australian vernacular, or in the Australian cultural language. I don't know what it is, but anyway, it's called artesian water. In other words, coming from deep, deep down. Comes along a citizen says, yes, there is water that comes up from the area of the Tohim, but that's not the Tohim. It's not water mamish from the Tohim. It's not mamish water from the Tohim, and the Tohim remains what it is, mamish unlimited and almost what you might call untouched. And what we have this inyan of Mayonets, and even these artesian bores that come up from under the ground, and the water appears on the surface and forms rivers and turns into all sorts of other inyanim, well, those are only ha'oris from the tohom. The tohom, as it were, undergoes another level of itself, and it gives forth another form or level of water, and that's where these inyanim derive. Or they don't derive from the etzem tohim, because otherwise it would come out that we're actually drawing directly from the tohim when we have an artesian bore or a mayon, and consider this is not much that way. We're not drawing mamish from the tohim. No, the tohim is a special state and a special capacity of water, which the Eibush put it there only to be a mokeh rochek to all sorts of other waters. But not that it itself actually, therefore the tohim never gets less than what it is. It never, as it were, alters.
But you can't say less from unlimited.
Huh?
Unlimited doesn't.
Unlimited?
Unlimited.
Yeah, ain't nothing. In other words, yeah, ain't nothing. But what I mean to say is that unlimited was only legabi, Elakus. I mean, soft there probably is ultimately some limit to it, but it's called in the Gemara Mayim Shein Lahem Say.
Isn't it pinpointing and saying that the koyach, the ayuli, we're saying that to the middle of the earth, right? We said that we don't know where it comes from. We know that it comes from the middle of the earth.
Yeah. So what we're saying is that this Tahim is a koyach ayuli atmi aposhet. The Tahim is a ayuli atmi aposhet. He's not nimta in what goes out from him. He only gives off a ha'ora for himself. So this mashal is a very difficult mashal, because ultimately speaking, what we're taining is that there's some way that the Tahim gives off other ha'oras from itself, which are water, but they're not really it. They're another level of water apart from the Tahim. And, I'm sorry to do that to you, but that's in effect what it says. And therefore, it's a difficult mashal. It's not easy to follow, and maybe that's why Chassidus brings other mashalim, because they're more miskarev el haseichel. Upon him, that's the mashal. Did you want to add something?
How in the first place can you say that the Haim? How in the first place can you say that the Haim is unlimited when it's confined within a limited space, which is?
Yeah, you're right. That's why I was careful to say already twice that we call it Mayim Shein Behem Save. Of Legabi Elakus, we'd probably have to say that it does have some sort of soul. You got the idea? In other words, we're only using the word unlimited Legabi all human values and all states. It's unlimited Legabi that. But ultimately, Legabi the unlimitedness of the Eibishter, then we would have to limit that somewhat. You follow? Edifa, Kumtais, that we got this amazing inyan, and therefore they're always careful to say, Shekola Mayones, Shekola Meimois, and all the waters, Hareim Nimtsoim Meatohim. He doesn't say Haim Oilim Meatohim, or Haim Nimshochim Meatohim. He says they are Nimtsoim. Now the word Nimtso means they find themselves, They're like, Chokme Me'ayin Timah, as a famous, they are nimto, which means that there's this amazing inyan that the tohim gives off other waters from itself, but not it actually goes into those waters. Nimtoim me'atohim harei hatohim atzmei ein. I'm sorry, harei ein hatohim atzmei mishpashet bo. The tohim itself is not mishpashet at all. Ki mayonas hanimtoim memena, and they're nimto memena. They're only nimtoim memena. And in that gufa, those mayonas which are revealed to us and they come out on the surface, well, they're already called the iron of the Yesha and the Yesha Nivra. They're like how much of the iron of the Yesha Nivra. But the iron of the Yesha Miti, well, that's we say there's another whole thing in Siddhis that the Tohim gives forth these new waters from itself, the Ha'ora, as it were, And then every mayon which comes up above the earth has down close to the, what you might call the Tahim, close to the Tahim. It has what we call a mayon nelam or a mayon atzmi. In other words, it's just like we see that a mayon is a series of tipin that's very difficult to know exactly how it is and how is it coming from. So way down at the beginning, there's like an appearance from the Tahim with this union of a new Teves, which is called a mayon, and that's called the iron of the Yeshua Miti. That's the iron which is close to the Yeshua Miti, and then these appearances of the mayon with their tip, with their drops at the top of the earth, they're called the iron of the Yeshua. And they're like a moshel for the iron of the Yeshua. So there we got it. It's a very amazing description of the whole inyan of the function of the Tahim and its relationship to the things which come from it. So here we see once again, if there weren't the Tahim, there wouldn't be all the Mayonas and all the Maimas. Oh, but not the Maimas and the Mayonas are actually the Tahim. They are a Ha'orah from the Tahim. Pick the Zevi, the Koyach HaTzomeach. If there weren't Koyach HaTzomeach, be Atzmi or be Yuli in the earth, then the earth would never be what it is, a producing entity. But not that the actual details of the growing powers that come out in each part of the earth are actually direct expressions of that Koyach HaTzomeach. They already are a derivation, but ha'ora from the actual Achmi of the Koyach HaTzomeach. I mean, it's a very amazing principle, very amazing inyan. And, like we pointed out, that another moshel for them is this whole concept of the koyches of the klulim in the etzem hanefesh, and then, for example, the koyach hamaskal, the mind. Yeah, that's already like the koyach ha'yuli, how he's already become shy to Gili almost. Well, that's the ayin of the Yeshua Anivru already. And the koyach ha'yuli ha'atzmi, he gives off a beginning of himself, which is called a hamshocha ne'elemes. And some people, in some environments, mashma that even the koyach hamaskal is still the koyach hamshocha ne'elemes, which means it's still the ayin of the Yeshua Amiti. And then there's another ayin between that and chokhmah, and that's more like the ayin. In that kufa, there's like different ways of explaining it. But clearly is that's another marshal of the whole inyan. Right. So now says the Rebbe, that's that marshal. That those mayonas are only nimtzoim from the Tahim. K'moi kain, similar, hu b'koyach hatzeimeh, shebe'etzem mohusei hu koyach atzmi u poshut. Poshut meaning divorced from any lavush, divorced from any tziur. It's not a gathering together of any specific tziurim, but it's poshut, meaning absolutely simple in its makeup. She'eno mispashet v'nimshach klal. It's not in its very self, is not mispashet but not nimshach at all. It's exactly what it is, and it is what it is. Ki'im, says the Rebbe, ha'ora mikoyach hatzomeach, hu shemispashet v'nimshach b'atah ha'oretz, shemimeno nimshach ha'smicha. He said, what actually goes into the ground, and from it there comes the actual tzmicha, and it derives itself into all sorts of myriads of different expressions for all the different tzmochim in the ground. He said that's only a ha'ora from the koyach hatzomeach, and that is yeh mispashit. That does yeh derive in the form of a ha'ora throughout the earth, and it's nimshach into the mamish, into the afa of the earth, into the actual earth and the dust of the earth itself, and from that there comes the inyan of the actual producing of specific Tamachim. So we've gone further. We've now said that the koyach hatzomeach is a atzmi mamish, pshitas petachlis. He's just nimtzo. He's not malubish and he's not mispashet, and he's not misgale or mispashet klal, because he's an atzmi. He's an etzem. What is here misgale? Well, that's a ha'ora mimenu. However, we've made a big jump. We've gone from the Achmi into a Ha'ora, which is already producing the specific growths. And therefore, said the Rebbe, we have to say that between that specific growths, Ha'ora of the Tzomeh, and the actual Tzomeh, we have to say there's another Ha'ora. And that's what we call the Ha'ora Klolius אומנם זה מובן שהאור הנמשכת מהכוח הצמח עצמי, הרי הוא האור המובדלת בערך מהצמח, דהיינו הפריויה. He said that haora which is nimshach from the koach hatzamech itself, his very self, then harihu haora mudeles be'erech, it's completely moved out by way of comparison or what you might call status. Mi'atzemach, from the specific plant, dahainu aprior Eisa. V'gam hu haora klolius adai. Ve'ein bo is chauches protiim kifi proti miniha tzmochim. In other words, this is our first haora. We've sort of around the corner slightly. We said that ultimately there's a second haora, which is Yevim Slavish in every tzemach. However, we have to say there's another haora. What that's a haora klolius, and vibala that's a haora klolius. It's a haora which we call the ayin harishoin. It's the ayin, the haora from the koach atzmi or the koach atzmi. And therefore, it's a haora klolius, and it doesn't have any interdivision, specific interdivision, which would be appropriate to the different details of the different forms of the growing vegetational things. And therefore, we got now imkain. We got now our two extremities. We've got the actual koach tzarmeach, ha'atzmi, ha'poshut, and then we got the actual tzmochim which grow on the face of the earth. In the middle, we've got two ha'oras. We have ha'ora klolius from the koach tzarmeach, and then in that kufa we have a further ha'ora which becomes more specific, and or it lends itself to the specific, and it's able to develop and produce or interdivide itself in such a way that it'll relate to each and every specific tema. So imkain then we've got so how do we say that middle state divides itself into two, and particularly that first one is a very, very klolius, which is still too much for the rest of the details of the necessities of all the tzmochim. Ki, now this ki is referring to that ha'ora klolius harishona. He said, ki yodua to ha'oyer hu me'ein hamoyer. Every ha'ora is a geder of oyer. It's a definitional. When I say the word ha'ora, I mean a luminescence. So the whole concept of the word ha'ora is based on the munach, the basic axiomatic idea of oyer. And therefore he said every oyer is a ha'ora, or every ha'ora is basically oyer. And therefore he said we have a cloud that every oyer hu me'ein hamoyer. Now this is the famous cloud of the Alter Rebbe, what he introduces over there in that famous, that's where he comes out with that expression, in that famous letter which we mentioned earlier, that the oyer is me'ein hamoyer. And as we've discussed this on many occasions, but once again, just very briefly, the word me'ein means that it's got in itself inyonim which partake from the oyer. However, it's not the oyer itself at all. It's not the ma'or. It's got itself inyonim from the ma'or, but it's not the ma'or itself at all. And so on the one hand, I earn by saying ha'ora and oyer, I earn that they have the ability to take in themselves very important characteristics of the moyer, but on the other hand, it still remains a ha'ora bilvat. Therefore, that's an amazing uftu, that on the one hand, it's absolutely of no error cloud to the moyer. On the other hand, it's got very important and essential characteristics of the moyer in its form of his colors, and that's what we call oyer me'ein hamoyer, af shuhu ein be'erech al hamoyer, and he's only ein van ha'ora bilvad. Yet nonetheless, it's got in it all. So, since we say that oyer is me'ein hamoyer, which means that you got a gilui from the koach hatzamech ha'atzmi, and he's b'derech ha'ora mimenu, then oyer is always a gilui b'derech kiruv. It's not b'derech richuv, it's b'derech kiruv. As if it's b'derech kiruv, then it's a inin of oyer me'ein hamoyer. And therefore that first essential ayin, or that first essential ha'ora, is too kloli and too low be'erech to be a mokim for any particular tzmochim. And that's what he says, that because it's well known that ha'oyer is mi'ein ha'moyer shaloi, or k'moy oyer ha'shemesh hu mi'ein more oyer ha'shemesh. It's like the moyer of the shemesh. V'oyer ha'lavona mi'ein ma'or ha'lavona. The oyer of the lavona participates in itself and carries in itself certain attributes of the ma'or, which is the lavona, the luminary, which is the lavona, and the shemesh is the luminary of the oyer of the shemesh. Ukemoi keinu b'koach hatzameach, shaha'ora hi mi'ein ha'etzem. In other words, that since every ha'ora is mi'ein ha'etzem, and we said this comes b'derech ha'ora, and therefore we have to say that the ha'ora is also too big for the specific tzmochim, because it's a ha'ora from the ma'or, which is the koach hatzameach ha'atzmi. And the oil which goes off from it is similar to it. It's too massive and too kloli and poshut to be a direct mashpir in all the tzmochim. So what are we going to do then? We have to have another ha'ora. We have to have a ha'ora from that ha'ora, and that ha'ora then derives into all the tzmachim. And that second ha'ora, being only a ha'ora from the first ha'ora, it's already able to relate to the second tzmachim. But here there's the shaila that how does the second ha'ora manage? Because the second ha'ora is only a ha'ora from the first ha'ora, and the first ha'ora is also me'ein hamoya shaloi, which is pshitas and ein seif and blion. So if the second ha'ora is only a ha'ora from the first ha'ora, then it hasn't gone very far away, because it's also a ha'ora from the big ha'ora, as you might call it. How come it becomes able to relate to all the inyonim? It's a ha'ora, and oya mi'ein ha'moya. But I was suspecting that somebody would come up with that child, but I can see that everybody's so told just in trying to figure out what the heck this is all about, that they didn't pack that particular kashia. So what we're going to say in the brackets, to a certain extent, gets us out of the kashia. And it gets us out of the kashia in this particular area. But in certain other areas, I'm not sure if it would. But I'm not going to bother with those certain other areas for a moment, because what we're going to say now, to a certain extent, gets us out of the problem, in a way. And that's what the Rebbe is now going to say, and here you really got to put your thinking caps on. Because the Rebbe now says, V'hagam, and even though the yesh loima, the koyach hatzomeach, hu inyan koyach v'lo yoya. The inyan koyach, hu b'chinas havdola. V'yesh loima, the lochein einay muchrach. I must cause it be imrei bina perek yud beis. Now, I wish you all had slacha, that if you look up the Imrei Bina, Perek Yud Beis, I wish you all had slacha Meruba. That is one of the most famous prochim that Mittel Rebbe ever wrote. And it's really a mind boggler. But over there he deals with all these different concepts, like oya of a moya, and oya of a koyach, and yesh mi'ayin, and gili ahelim, and tutzim. And you've got one of the very early Maimorim that the Rebbe Rashab wrote was a biur b'kitzora of what he made out of that Perek Yud Beis. That's very interesting. He writes a biur b'derech kitzora be'izah Hashem. The Perek Yud Beis being Rebina. I can show it to you. It's one of the Sifrei Maimorim. And so it's very famous Perek, very, very amazing. And in Ayin Beis, at the beginning of the second Chelik, you got there about 4 or 5 Maimorim. What they deal with the basic themes in that central perig, which is called the perig Yud Beis of the Yom Rabina. So that's like a rub if you want to take a look over that. However, suffice it to say that we have two inyanim that we mentioned at the beginning of the class, and that is Uyer v'Koyach. If you look in Tanya in Perik Nun Aleph and Nun Beis, you find that the Alter Rebbe uses the following expressions. The Alter Rebbe says Uyer v'Chayis v'Koyach. He talks about the Hashpah, the Eibishter into Elamas. He uses three expressions. Uyer v'Chayis v'Koyach. What Uyer means light, Chayis means life force, or life-giving force, and Koyach means a specific revelation of a limited divine power, like we said earlier at the beginning of the class. So now we started off and we called the Koyach HaTzomeach HaKoyach, and we even explained what we were talking about. If you look carefully, we've sort of slipped somewhat from that into the concept of Uyer. We started talking about Uyer v'Moyach. So the Rebbe therefore puts in brackets that, wait a minute, the Koyach HaTzomeach Kishmei Keinhu is really a Koyach. It's not really a Uyer. The Koyach HaTzomeach is already a Koyach from the Eibishter. It's not really Uyer. Uyer is another concept altogether. In other words, when we talk about Uyer, we talk about things which are kloli and makif. They're not nimshuk mamish into pinimit. And it's like the difference between Uyer v'kli. Yeah, we talk about Uyer v'kli, and we say that the makir of the Uyer is the moya, but that's the atzmas, and then there's the inyan for the makir, the kli is what we call the rishimu. The makir, the kli is the rishimu, and that's the inyan from Helium, on an inyan that the Eibishter produces like a thing from himself, almost separate from himself. Uyer is not separate. Uyer is dafki dovuk in the moya. You can't have Uyer without the moya. If they're not vacuum one, you don't have Uyer b'klal. Of a kli is where the Eibishter produces a thing from himself, and therefore the famous marshal instead for koyach is the idea of zriko. This concept of koyach hazriko, where you take an entity and throw it up into the air, so that entity doesn't fly in the air. An entity normally falls with gravity. It doesn't go up against gravity. What makes it go up into the air? That there comes out literally a power out of your hand and is mislavish around the stone, not really mislavish, but it surrounds the stone, and it causes him to go against his own will almost into the air. And so that passage of a hashpah from your body onto the stone, that's called koyach. It's called koyach, which means that koyach by definition is something that separates itself, but it's not really, it's only noticeable when the stone starts flying that thing is going out of your body. Otherwise, it's not so, and it's really not called kach, begorui, that's connected with your body. It flies up into the air, and if somebody didn't know you were there, it just wouldn't know what the heck and where it's coming from. It's flying around in the air. In other words, that the inyan and koyach is something that's presents itself in a specific way, and it's not governed by all the concepts of Uyer. On the contrary, it's governed by the concept of Kli. So if we call the Koyach HaTzomeach, then we're talking about something which has come from the Koyach HaKli L'mayla, not the Koyach of Uyer. I might have, out of all this Hashpah, the Kelim have got unlimited Hashpah. The Kelim are able to give their own Hashpah, just like the Uyers are. No, it's another type of Hashpah called Koyach, and not Uyer. So therefore the Rebbe says you don't need to worry so much maybe about this whole how these two ions get together, because they're not really a inyan of Uyer, they're really a inyan of Uyer. The Koyach HaTzomeach is a Koyach, not Uyer. Even though we can look at it say the Koyach HaTzomeach hu inyan Koyach v'lo Uyer. It's not the concept of Uyer, but of power or specific defined revelation. The inyan koyach hu b'chinas havdola. Koyach always functions not in a connected way, not like Uyer. Uyer always has to be united with its moya, otherwise it's not Uyer. But koyach dafki functions a way of being separated from its moya. It goes out from its moya and flies around in another area, as it were. Just like the Koyach HaZrika goes out from the mensch and is poil michutz mimenu legam. That's called a pu'ula. That's what we described earlier, a pu'ula. Amamela says that. If that's the case, then it's in an oven of Havdalah from its moya. Imkain, how do we go with all these concepts that we just mentioned? Moya and oya bein a moya. Talting lechera teinim fin koyach v'loy oya. And do it's afkinim fin Havdalah, which means it doesn't have all the characteristics of oil, which is davuk and united with its ma'or. And now he puts in bracket, and that was, we earn another thing with that, that it doesn't have to be. I must cause of bim rebina perek yud base with great atzlocher. I must cause of mokimacher bedibo masker bekof hey bekislev rei sama. Well, I'm a great believer in these Hashgacha Pratius in Yonim. Kof Hei Bekislev is a mimer for Chanukah. When was Kof Hei Bekislev? The first day of Chanukah is Kof Hei. And that's a mimer in Rei Summer from Chanukah, Rei Tov Rei Summer. Kof Hei Bekislev. Nickness or Yevonim no, how do you call it? Nitzchu, it's a Rosh in the Gemara. On the 25th of Kislev, that's when began the whole in and of Chanukah. It's amazing, you guys don't even know that Chanukah is Kof Hei B'Kislev. It's hard for me to imagine that. But anyway, I'll say it is. It's, here we are talking about the difference in Nimri Bina between and oil, the others don't even know that Kof Hei B'Kislev was the first day of Chanukah. Anyway, whatever, maybe you do, you're just a little bit confused. Is Mamela Kof Hei B'Kislev? So here we see the most amazing thing,
It was so pshittus that it didn't get aside.
Yeah, they didn't identify it.
Everyone knows.
Yeah. Is Mamela come to Islafisa that here we have an amazing Hashgacha Pratius. We just come from Chanukah and we're learning in a Maimon and the Rebbe sends you to a Maimon for Chanukah. No? You don't find? I find that sort of thing very amazing. It's very fascinating. And it's a simon, there's an old saying by the Lomdei Torah that if you're learning Ainin, you're just learning Lafia Seder, you're not machaven to anything, you're just learning Lafia Seder. And all of a sudden you learn something which is mamish at that time where you are, well, that's a sign you learn English more. So I don't know if you guys are going to get any yeses from that, or if you're going to all of a sudden become very full of your own importance with the whole ma'aseh. But if you do, then you'll stop learning Lishma. The whole thing of learning Lishma means you don't learn with yeses, and you don't learn with gaiva, and you don't think you're great. You just learn for the sake of the fact that it's Torah Hashem. Anyway, Kof Hei B'Kislev, what does the Rebbe write over there? That he writes that there's a difference between Koyach and Oya, and he writes over there that Lachain ain't a Mukhrach.
We didn't have the Siddur class on Hanukkah, but if we would have had a Siddur class on Hanukkah, we would have learned this segment on Kof Hei. Because it was the first day, it's the
good
first
for you,
day back
boy.
in Siddur class.
See, even better. Very nice.
Then it would have been the smoke.
Yeah, very nice. Excellent. So maybe come to us if he said that one way or another we have to catch it up. You understand? One way or another we have to make it. We have to catch it up. And that's like the amazing thing that the statement that the Kloisenberger made about the young couple that when Nisper al Kiddush Hashem Rahman and Klan in Bombay, that he made it on the birthday of Gabriel Holtzberg, Zeicher Tzadik Levrach. He said that statement on the birthday. That it was the date on which he said that statement was actually the birthday, maybe the day that he was actually born. I'm not sure about that. It was around about the time he was born. It's mind-boggling. So, the Eibishter does juggle that you say things at the moment that you're supposed to say them. That's really amazing. Anyway, so everybody says, well, when are we going to finish? It's getting late and this is getting more complicated as we go along. So, the Nakuti is that if I say something is oil, that to a certain extent I have to say that it's behechreach. But it has to be. If you've got a moya, then automatically the moya produces oil. However, koyach is something which is separate from the etzem. It's not a gilui open of the etzem, and it's not a mamela dikagilui of the etzem. And therefore, koyach only functions if the moya that gives off the koyach wants. If not, there's not going to be any specific gilui b'derech helim from it. And therefore, that's what the Rebbe says here. We earn a tremendous thing. If we say that koyach tzameh is koyach and not oya, then we earn that it's dafki a inyan deliberate rather than a inyan b'derech meila. Now, the Rebbe points out over there in Tovrei Samech, in that Maimon Chochanik. He points out over there, the Rebbe, Meila, you can't really say that. Meila, the Gabi, the Eivishter, even Oyer, you can't really say it was just Mamela. Everything from the Eivishter is B'derech Rotzen, Kemuvan. However, in the Moshel and the Nimshel, it's much more svara to say koyach rather than oyer, because oyer, the Eibishter Einoch doesn't do anything without him wanting, but the oyer does go in a way that it's much more hard to pick the rotzen in it, because it's like mamela. When he does it b'derech koyach, then we see that that's mamish. And therefore the bria in Yirmiyahu Hanavi is described, the whole bria is described as koyach. Yeah, Ata Barosa, yes, a Shamayim V'oretz, b'koychacha hagodel, as they state in Yirmiyahu Hanavi. And Mamela, therefore, if I say in all inyonim chutz from etzem elakus atzmei, the lashon for koyach, then I mean something which has to be deliberate. Mashenken oyer doesn't have to be deliberate. Just that Mamela Sokos, if you would have to say that also, but koyach is a much better concept which illustrates the whole idea. And that's what the Rebbe says over there in the Maimon Rei Samach. He said that we use different lashonos, yeah, and there's a whole big biur lamas there, but so that we always try to be as exact as we can lefi the musagim hashayachim le'inanahu. And therefore we call it dafke koyach, and therefore we earn that koyach is eina muchrach. It doesn't have to be. Koyach is always a deliberate act, and that fits in very beautiful with the whole concept, and that's what's written over there in Perek Yud Beis in him repeating benegeh to koyach and oyer. That's one of the big inyonim which is written over there in Perek Yud Beis, that the difference between oyer and koyach is a inyan oyer is more b'derech mamela, v'elu koyach is a inyan dafke b'kavona, and dafke b'kavona muchavenes v'chulu, and there he says I'm much called Kislev Rei Samach. He said because that's the same Indian. So now, the Rebbe say, we've been saying that oyer is ma'in hamoya. We've been pilpering around earlier about oyer being ma'in hamoya. Now we're saying, no, wait a minute, it's not really oyer, it's koyach. At the Rebbe koyach, maybe we haven't got oyer ma'in hamoya anymore. We lose the whole oyer ma'in hamoya. So therefore we said, no, that in koyach gufa there's also oyer ma'in hamoya, but it's not exactly the same as it is by oyer ma'in hamoya. But for our purposes, it's enough to get us away with it. You understand? We can always get away with it. But, in other words, there is a certain oyer ma'in hamoya even in koyach. And what we're going to see in that kufa is that in the Indian fan oyer ma'in hamoya, how it is in koyach, not mamish in oyer, it'll be easier to talk about this gradation from one level in the ayin to the other, because we're not talking mamish in oyer, we're talking to a certain gather which is not mamish oyer, it's koyach. And we see this amazing thing that there have been a few lines over there in Imri Bina and other places. It's huge reading. In a few lines that Rebbe's put us right, he sort of developed for us the two svaras, and he sort of put them together, and then he sort of moved you into a more what you might call functioning or comfortable sort of way to approach the Holy. So Mitzvah tomorrow evening, which is already Hey Teves, Levoil Mamish will have more to say about it. So what I'd like to do, I've heard, I don't know, I've heard that there's going to be a big thing in Jerusalem tomorrow, this Shleishim, tomorrow night it's going to be. But look, even though